The nurses looked extremely concerned.
Doctor, we really need to admit him. I don't think that he is faking it. I really think that he needs our help.
Him? Forget it. He's probably just a gang member. Black guys like him usually are.
Hi there, my name is Joel and I love to travel. My journeys have taken me all over the world and I have many amazing stories to tell. But right now, I want to tell you about the one time that I got so angry that I kind of did something really illegal. But hear me out. I promise that I was justified. For starters, I'm 32 years old and I grew up and live in South Africa. But I speak English perfectly. When I was young, I would look at the globe that my father kept in his office and I would dream about visiting all of the countries of the world. It was something that I wanted to do more than anything else. And when I got older and became a surgeon, I finally had enough money that I could go on a trip to a new destination several times a year. I've been to every continent except Antarctica, but eventually, I plan to go even there. This story, however, occurred when visited the United States. It wasn't the first time that I went there, but it was the first time that I had major problems. You see, I went to Houston for the first time, and I was having a wonderful time when suddenly I began to feel ill. My abdomen was in agony. The pain was so bad that I nearly was passing out. Instantly, I suspected that it might be appendicitis, and so I rushed to the hospital. However, that was when things began to go downhill fast.
What is this man doing here?
He's complaining about abdominal pain, doctor.
Look at him. He's just trying to get some painkillers. His kind always does.
No, sir. That isn't true. It's probably appendicitis. Please run some tests.
Appendicitis? And how would someone like you know that?
Please believe me. I'm a surgeon.
A surgeon? You've got to be kidding me. See, I knew that he was lying. There's no way that he's a surgeon. There's nothing that his kind won't be lie about.
I was in such pain that I couldn't argue with him. Instead, I sat in the waiting room and assumed that if things got worse, that they would have helped me. Which, at the rate at which the pain was increasing, I assumed that it wouldn't be very long. As I sat there, I could hear the nurses begging the doctor to help me, but he kept glaring at me and refused to admit me. There were a few times when I passed out from the pain, and when I woke up, the nurses looked extremely concerned.
Doctor, we really need to admit him. I don't think that he is faking it. I really think that he needs our help.
Him? Forget it. He's probably just a gang member. Black guys like him usually are.
I didn't know how much more I could take. The pain was almost too much to bear. I was suffering so much that I was drenched in sweat and couldn't even stand up anymore, or even see straight. It was clear that I had a very high fever, and it was only getting worse. Finally, the doctor came back out to the waiting room, and for a brief moment, I thought that he had finally changed his mind. But boy, was I mistaken.
Why are you still here? Everyone can see that you're just faking it. You're doing a good job, so I can assume that maybe you're an actor of some sort, but I'm not falling for it.
Please, sir. I'm not faking it. I'm in incredible agony. My appendix is going to burst any second.
Just stop already. Why do you people constantly come in here looking for painkillers? You should be ashamed of yourself.
Just then, another doctor came in. The second that she came in, she noticed the other doctor speaking to me and came over to see what was going on.
Hey, what's going on over here?
It's just some gangbanger looking for a drug fix.
She took one look at me and got extremely angry.
Are you kidding me? He's burning up. Nurse, admit this man immediately and run some tests and put a rush on getting those results.
Thankfully, the nurses listened to her and rushed me into the examination room. They ran several tests and also prepared the operating room for me, as the doctor suspected just as I did. Sure enough, when the tests came back, they showed that I had been correct and I was prepped and rushed up to the operating room. When I finally woke up, I was still in pain, but it wasn't nearly as bad as it was before my surgery. The female doctor that had been my savior walked into my room to check on me.
Hello there, Joel. How are you feeling?
Much better now. How bad was it?
If we hadn't admitted you when we did, then you probably would have died in that waiting room.
I was worried that that would happen. Thank you for admitting me when you did. What was wrong with that other doctor, though?
Yeah, sorry about him. I've tried to get him fired so many times. He's incredibly racist, and I can only imagine the kinds of things that go on when I'm not here. In fact, I was planning to take the day off, but my plans were canceled at the last minute, and so I came into work.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry, but I'm really happy that your plans were canceled. Truly, I owe you my life. She laughed, and then continued to do her rounds. That whole day, I was very groggy and trying to recover from my surgery. Every now and then, I would see the male doctor that had nearly cost me my life. He would just walk by and glare at me menacingly. Towards the end of the day, he came into my room to threaten me.
Listen, yeah, maybe I was wrong, but if you know what's good for you, you'll just take your pain meds and leave as soon as you can.
Oh, are you just scared that I might get you reported for incompetence?
No one will believe even if you did. They'll know better than to trust a black guy.
What is wrong with you? I would never treat a patient the way you have treated me. This is absolutely unconscionable.
I don't care what you think. You just better be gone first thing in the morning. Or else I'll make sure that you don't walk out the hospital at all.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that he was speaking to me that way. I could only imagine how many people that he had hurt over the years because he was turning people away from the hospital. I didn't know what I could do, but then I looked out into the hallway and saw a bucket of water and some cleaning supplies sitting on the ground near to an emergency exit. A dark thought instantly formed in my mind. I knew that the doctor would be walking by my room at least once more, as the elevator was near to my room, and so even though it was really hard for me to do so, I managed to sneak out of my room. I quickly checked the hallway to make sure that the coast was clear, and then I propped the door to the stairwell open, and then dumped all the water and cleaning supplies on the ground, and then returned to my room to wait. I didn't have to wait long when I heard the doctor coming down the hallway. Once he was outside my door, I rushed him with all the energy I could muster and shoved him onto the tiled floor, where I had dumped the chemicals and water. It didn't take much to get him to slip and be sent, flying across the hallway and through the open door and into the stairwell. My intentions were for him to fall down one flight, but since he was covered in the fluids, he kept falling down the stairs until he fell all the way from the 6th floor that we had been on to the ground floor. Carefully, I crept back to my room and tried to go to sleep to make it look like I hadn't done anything at all. In the morning, I checked myself out of the hospital and quickly made my way to the airport and flew home. I was terrified that I would get in trouble for what I had done, but no one had stopped me leaving the country. When I got home, I looked up online to see if anyone had reported about what had happened, and I was shocked to see that the local news had reported a terrible tragedy at the hospital that I had been admitted to. They reported that a doctor had a terrible accident and had slipped on spill and had severely injured himself, falling down several flights of stairs. The injuries were so severe that he was forced to retire, as he would never be able to perform surgery again and had lost the ability to walk. Part of me felt guilty for just how badly he had been injured, but a much larger part of me felt that I had gotten justice for all the people that he had no doubt hurt over the many years of his career, and all the people that he might have hurt had I done nothing. So tell me, was I in the wrong? In an attempt to silence me. Why can't you be as calm and polite as Nikki? All you know how to do is complain.
If you're so unhappy in this family, leave. Anyway, you don't contribute much to the household. You're more of a hindrance.
The problem began with threats to refuse to pay for my university expenses and ended with my parents kicking me out of the house as soon as I turned 18. It was a terrible time for me. With nowhere to go and not enough money to sustain myself, I had to rely on all my ingenuity to avoid ending up on the streets. I don't think I come from a dysfunctional family, or at least I didn't think so when I was little. My family always treated me well, providing me with all the love and care necessary despite never being in the best economic situation. And indeed, that's how it continued during the first years of my life, in a practically idyllic harmony where, although I was never the favored one at home, they never denied me basic attention. Everything began to change, without me even realizing it, when my brother Nicky was born. Now that you're going to become a big brother, you'll have to take on more responsibilities and help us always ensure his well-being. Understood? My father stated this with pride, thus passing on his own excitement about having a new member in the family to me. And although at first I didn't understand why everyone was so excited, soon the reason why all the adults around me were so thrilled became clear. This is something I learned many years later, well into adolescence, but my own birth was not planned. Rather, it was the result of a careless night of partying and drunkenness. There was nothing wrong with it. Or, better said, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it at that time. But many things that I considered as unchangeable truths in my early youth would soon be shaken. Nicky turned out to be the perfect child in my parents' eyes, not only because of his beauty, but also because of his friendly character and all the successes he seemed destined to achieve from a very young age. Not only my parents, but everyone who knew him didn't hesitate to shower him with compliments, praising him for his good looks and his good behavior. Soon, the comparisons began.
Caleb, why can't you be a bit more like your brother? Look how sociable he is. They've barely met the neighbor's son and they're already playing as if they've been friends for a lifetime.
But Mom, he's 3 years old. Anyone who approaches you at 3 years old, you consider them your friend. Not only should you be more sociable, but also improve your grades. Who goes to 3rd grade and doesn't have an A in all subjects? Surely Nicky could do better. He can already read and do sums. He's way ahead of his peers. He actually only knows a few letters and can count to 10.
Jealousy is a very bad thing, son. It corrodes the soul.
Perhaps my mother was right, and feeling jealous was a waste of time. But my relatives did nothing to prevent me from feeling overshadowed by my younger brother. On the contrary, whenever Nicky did something even remotely praiseworthy, no matter how routine or irrelevant it seemed to me, they found a way to turn it into a commendable feat. The comparisons became a daily occurrence. At first, they were minor things like, "Why can't you clean your room as neatly as your brother?" Or, "You need to dress better. You have enough decent clothes not to go around looking like a vagabond. Look at your brother, always so handsome." But gradually, as the years passed, they escalated. And they not only criticized me for things I did wrong, but also used the things I did well to reproach me for not doing better. "Don't let it get to your head. I'm not that good, and you're not that bad." That's hard to believe when every moment of the day they make sure to remind me otherwise, as if instead of having 2 children, they only had 1. And the remaining teenager was just a random person they had to deal with out of obligation, never out of personal affection. Do you want me to talk to them? If you could do me that favor, they'll listen to you for sure. They always listened to Nicky, no matter what he said. So it was a surprise to discover that this turned out to be the exception that proved the rule. Nicky, who did try to fulfill the promise he had made to me and convince my parents to treat me better, was completely ignored when he brought up the issue. Not only did our parents change the subject as soon as either of us tried to call their attention to it, but once they got tired of giving us the runaround, they flat out told us that we were imagining things and that they loved us both equally. If they were stricter with me, to the point of giving me more chores at home than I deserved, it was only because they wanted the best for me and knew I could strive for more. They indulged Nicky in everything, giving him gifts and sparing him responsibilities, while burdening me with more work and reproaches that often had no basis. Why can't I sign up for guitar classes? I've gotten excellent grades in all my subjects, as we agreed I would. There isn't enough money. Besides, why would you do extracurricular activities? That's a waste of time. You have things to do at home. But the classes are free. The school provides them, and they even lend the instruments themselves.
Your father already told you no, you don't have time for those nonsense activities.
The curious thing was that there was always time and money to waste for Nicky. As soon as he showed interest in an activity, no matter how impractical it was, my parents went out of their way to make sure he could attend. And Nicky wasn't a bad person. He had shown that on numerous occasions when he tried to help me get a fairer deal. But he wasn't the perfect being. Everyone claimed he was either. My brother was too impulsive and indecisive. The activity that brought him pleasure today could hold 0 interest for him the following week. It was inconvenient for me, but my parents seemed unfazed, blinded as they were by the halo of splendor they saw in Nicky. Needless to say, they didn't demand the perfect scores from him that they expected from me. At first, when I was very young, I tolerated this. But as I grew up and realized that instead of changing, the situation was escalating, my complaints became more constant, to the point that my parents were forced to confront me and punish me more often in an attempt to silence me. Why can't you be as calm and polite as Nicky? All you know how to do is complain.
If you're so unhappy in this family, leave. Anyway, you don't contribute much to the household. You're more of a hindrance.
The problem began with threats to refuse to pay for my university expenses and ended with my parents kicking me out of the house as soon as I turned 18. It was a terrible time for me. With nowhere to go and not enough money to sustain myself, I had to rely on all my ingenuity to avoid ending up on the streets. I survived thanks to the kindness of some friends who let me stay in their home until I could afford an apartment. I abandoned my educational opportunities in favor of getting a job to survive. And yes, after a few years, I managed to stabilize and start a new life away from parents who rejected me shamelessly. I lost contact with them, although I still occasionally spoke to Nicky, as he was the only one who still cared about me and even sent me some money in those first few months when I struggled to save enough to support myself.
Our parents are in debt. They're trying to hide it from me, so I don't worry, but I know what's going on. I'm not blind.
Let them dig themselves out of the hole on their own. They're old enough to know how to spend their meager fortune.
You know very well that they waste too much, and their carpentry business is about to collapse. Couldn't you lend them a hand now that you're doing well?
Why would I help them after everything they did to me? You help them, since they treated you so well. Nicky did want to help, but contrary to what our relatives predicted, things weren't going so well for him in life. At 20, he had dropped out of university to take a gap year traveling around Europe, which my parents funded without sparing any expenses. And now that he was back in the country, he had taken on a part-time job at a fast food chain that obviously didn't pay very well. As for me, I had managed to stabilize my life and resume my studies. I got a job at a veterinary clinic, which provided me with a good salary and even allowed me to save some money. I had no interest in getting involved with my parents again, so I wished Nicky luck and completely washed my hands of the matter. It was several months later when I found out that my parents' financial problems had escalated to the point where they were about to have their car and house repossessed. The police had already knocked on their door, and from what I could gather, they were also being investigated for fraud.
It's all a mistake, Caleb. You must help us. We didn't realize the debts had piled up so much, and we needed the money to give you and Nicky a better future.
Only to Nicky, rather. And yet I can see that you've squandered a lot on indulgences for yourselves.
Don't be like that. We did everything we could to give you a good childhood. It's just that you were always a very rebellious child, always demanding more than we could give.
My parents begged for help, but beyond offering some advice, I didn't extend a helping hand. Everything I had built from the age of 18 until that moment was the result of my own efforts, and I wasn't going to let anyone convince me otherwise. However, other people weren't so forgiving. As it turned out, my parents had borrowed a great deal of money from people they knew and refused to pay them back. Some of those people were their customers or suppliers, and they owed tens of thousands of dollars to many of them. Some were so angry that they even spray painted the words "liar" on the side of my parents' house. On top of that, their home was broken into several times and much of their belongings were stolen. Even their cars were broken into and stolen. For me, though, I never considered seeking revenge as such. However, things for my parents finally crossed the point of no return when they were finally arrested for embezzlement. After the police took them away, a local newspaper contacted me to interview me about them and my childhood. It may not have been my intention to publicly humiliate them, but by telling the truth about how they kicked me out of the house, that's exactly what happened. As for Nicky, well, I made sure to take care of him, and he moved in with me. In the end, I went from being a pariah, rejected by my own parents, to having free access to the family properties again and being seen almost as a hero in the media, while my parents had to serve a long sentence. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more stories.